I'm really convinced that we need European covered bonds for sustainable buildings, constructions and housing. Because there is no solution for climate change, biodiversity, chemicalization, resource consumption, nor a good ambient air quality if we do not tackle the buildings. The buildings constitute 50% of the resources that we are using in Europe. And it constitutes 40% of the CO2 emissions. Two other interesting figures. In Europe, 80% of the buildings that are going to be standing in 2050 are built already now. So that means this is of course a question of building new ones, but foremost this is a question of a deep renovation. How and how fast we renovate our existing buildings to be sustainable. And globally, when we are talking about the global markets, actually we are going to build as much new buildings in the upcoming 30 years than what we have been doing on our history before that. Quite staggering figures. If we wouldn't find the pathway to sustainable buildings, be it the renovation of the old buildings in Europe and in the USA, or the way to build modular, sustainable, long-standing, at least 100 years, reusable and positive energy buildings when you build the new ones, we are going to be in peril. And those investors that are going to invest in buildings that are poor in energy standards, in unsustainable resources, and with poor ability to be renovated, are going to be in peril also. What we are trying to do in the European Union with construction materials regulation and energy efficiency directive of the buildings is to set the time frame and the path for sustainable buildings. Instead of having a cost of COVID-19 by tenfold every year, after 10 years, that is the saddest and gloomiest forecast of the economists globally, we would need to have sustainable buildings. What that then means? Let's start with the new buildings. We all have played with our Lego parts. The new buildings should be fully and completely modular. That means that all of the parts, be it kitchens or be it sinks in bathroom, or be it beds or walls or floors or elements of walls or be it terraces, they need to be reused as elements. Because we would need to increase the longevity of the buildings and buildings materials by tenfold. This means that we need to find new uses of existing building materials, not to demolish them and waste all the material and energy that are bound on the material. And we would need to design so that the elements can be reused, that they can be refixed and upgraded. And this needs standards. And this is something what we would expect Europe to be a forerunner. Then when it goes to existing buildings, the target also as well in new buildings needs to be all in all energy positive buildings. This means that then when you renovate, make a deep renovation. Not this kind of a marginal, ineffective 10% or 15% energy efficiency renovation, but the best available technology in all of the fields when you renovate within the next upcoming 30 years. In air quality, in non-toxicity, in modularity, in a very small CO2 footprint of cement, in sustainable wood when it comes to bio-based materials, in such an energy efficiency of the building that the building itself is passive. And then when you add up the solar panels, wind power, and other forms of producing warmth and electricity, actually the part that is using the biggest part of the energy, over 40% in Europe, becomes the biggest, among the biggest energy producers. This is a huge change in the history of buildings and in the cost structure and what is worthwhile owning and what is not worthwhile owning. After this, we would need to think how we plan our elements, our solar panels, our windmills, our kitchens, so that they can be refurbished, upgraded, and reused. Zero waste principle needs to hold true in the building sector also. And we need to figure out how far we can go with legacy buildings on these reuse and recycle principles. And this is a tough cookie to deal with. This is, of course, what we know already. What we need to do is we need to incentivize investments for this huge renovation and upgraded energy efficiency and modularity, upgradability of the buildings. This happens via two ways or three ways. One way is the information, the class of resource efficiency and energy efficiency of buildings. The another way is that on the banking loans and in investments, if the building is sustainable in taxonomy classes, actually it has a beneficial treatment and its value is higher. And then vice versa, with energy inefficient, old, unrepairable building needs to be a net deficit for bank loans and investments, because it's going to lose the value sooner than what we think. When you see this increased negative end and positive end of the buildings, it makes it easier for pension funds and other investors to invest at least in good quality and hopefully in the best in class of buildings. And this is indeed needed, because on the crux of the problem nowadays is when I discuss with the construction and banking and municipality and investor sectors that no one actually starts. There isn't that much of a buildings where to invest that would be built on these principles of sustainability. There are a lot of materials and models and architectural knowledge, but no one actually orders them to be part of their buildings. They are not ordered because of the public procurement or procurement in general looks too much on the price and not on the benefit. And then when they are not ordered, they are not on the place. And so it's a vicious circle that we would need to turn around to be a beneficial circle so that the investment on sustainable buildings is more profitable, on unsustainable it's less profitable, that this is set clearly on the European covered bond rules also, that it is set clearly on Basel III banking requirements for bank lending, that it is set clearly besides the energy on other sustainability sectors in the next steps of the taxonomy, and that this is something that we put our renovation wave, social fund, cohesion funds, and next generation funds and just transition funds in Europe in play to support the individual house owners and apartment owners to start engaging on renovation wave. If you would think on that kind of a world, that the private investors would invest half, or the banks would lend half, and the other half would come half and half from EU sources and from national sources, I have no doubt that we could push this tidal wave of sustainable buildings on the shore within 5 to maximum 10 years. Now the question is only, do we start? Who will start? And when will we start when we should have started 10 years ago? So all the best for your conference, and I wish you all the best luck for your endeavors. Please be a part of sustainable buildings and sustainable investments in the future.